Hello and welcome back to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show. I am your host, Nick Bell, and I'm delighted to be joined once again by my travel compatriot this time, Liam. We've been away together, haven't we?
We absolutely have. What a brilliant weekend it was as well, and great to get our first Primera RFEF game together, wasn't it? I think we've been in the same stadium at Malaga before, but we've never actually stood side by side watching a game. So that was brilliant. Yeah, and the whole occasion, we mentioned a few times in the last 48 hours between each other, as well as occasionally on social media, was absolutely brilliant, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And when we say side by side, we mean side by side, as we did the Poznan, a 4-man Poznan in the Fondo Sur at Yeclano. I think there's only a handful of people that might actually be able to say they've ever done that, Liam. So we are blessed. But a brilliant weekend. And obviously, I'm sure we'll get into the weeds about it. But fantastic result for Yeclano. But maybe just to give them a little bit of praise first before we get into this whole show, because I've been to a lot of football games, and I'm sure you have, Liam. And I often get warm welcomes and stuff like that, but never anything like this for me in terms of being, put into the embrace of a club almost instantly and made one of their own, essentially, weren't we? We try not to, pin our colours to the mast on this podcast, but it's going to be hard not to love Yeclano after this weekend, isn't it?
Very much so. I mean, from the minute we get there, we sit down to have a meal with the Peña Curva bar, and then everybody at the club. And I don't just mean the people behind the scenes. They couldn't have done enough for us. And ultimately, the players as well, just thanking us for coming and everything. It was absolutely lovely. And as you say, we obviously report on all 40 teams, or we tend to focus on 30 of them, if we're honest. And we try to keep everyone on an even keel in terms of how we see things. But Yeclano Deportivo, thank you so much as a club, and Yecla as a town for welcoming the four of us so amazingly. And it was an unforgettable experience, and of course a brilliant result to top it all off as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole experience can be pinned onto the fact that you were sat outside a cafe bar on the Sunday morning, and you were just accosted by a lady with a newspaper, and told you immediately, "Oh, I'm Pedro's wife, and here's a newspaper for you to read." Literally, you just messaged me saying, "I'll get a newspaper." So it's just it's telepathic, isn't it? Really, around in Yecla. So I definitely recommend.
She said, "Did you enjoy your game yesterday?" I was like, "Who are you?" As she rolled up in her battered or whatever it was. Fantastic. Just a lovely, lovely town full of really, really welcoming, nice people. And that wasn't the end of our weekend, was it? Of course, we then watched 2 games on the Sunday. We got to Plus Ultra. We're not going to focus on that too much because they're Tercera RF. That's a little bit below where we usually discuss on this podcast. But, again, incredibly warm welcome there. Great to meet up with Stuart Bell and his friend at that game. Tell us a bit more about Plus Ultra briefly before we move on to the main event, shall we?
Yeah, well, Plus Ultra, we kind of went in there, with maybe some aspersions to begin with, Liam, because they're a team that were only on 8 points for the entire season, conceded 89 goals all year, and you're thinking, oh, these are going to be whipping boys. And to be honest, far from. And the more we learn about their story, and the owner leaving in January, and you could see the camaraderie between the players as well, who've clearly been through the mill this season. And to get that result on the final day, you could see what it meant to them. And yeah, absolutely brilliant. And the T-shirt tan to take away from it as well, from my perspective, because I wasn't as wise as you to pack the sun cream. So we were really in the elements there, out in some orange grove on the outskirts of Murcia, and just brilliant to take in some football at dinner time, which is what we were looking for.
Indeed it was. Right, enough of these asides. Let's get on to the top story of the weekend. In Grupo Dos, Ceuta being promoted. 23 games unbeaten coming into this one. I think they knew, didn't they, before they kicked off in Madrid against Fuenlabrada, that the win would get promoted, because Real Murcia had failed to win the night before against Antequera. They went ahead. They were pegged back to 1-1. Looked like it was going all square. They were going to have to wait another week to try and get promoted. And then Victor Corral, 88th minute winner, first goal of the season. And quite incredible when you think where this club was a couple of years ago, isn't it? Talk about bounce back ability from them, and all down to Jose Juan Romero, basically. And tell us a bit more about where they were around about January 2023, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think they were, looking like they were going to go back down to the Segunda Ref or the version of at that time as well into the fourth tier. And then Jose Juan Romero's coming in and has been a bit of a hero there to just lift them and continue listening and developing them as well, which is the most interesting thing because obviously I'm very much aware of Ceuta from their escapades last season, reaching the playoffs on the final game of the season, and going up against I think it was Tarragona as well. Actually, yeah, Nasty's Tarragona last season that they got knocked out by before Malaga went and beat them there. But the turnaround is huge. And I think, more impressively for this season for me, Liam, is that last year they had a very young squad in the grand scheme of things. They recruited really, really well and had an exciting amount of talent. And then I think they've realised that actually we need that bit of experience at this level. Like when you're a League One side or you're a National League side, and in order to sort of like break that ceiling, you need to bring in people who've done it before. And that's exactly what they did this summer. And it's paid off dividends tenfold because, as everyone keeps saying, this is the first time that a Spanish enclave side will be playing in the Liga. I know it's not technically the first time, but everyone keeps repeating that lie. It's the first time since 1968. We get our facts right here on this podcast, don't we, Liam? And yeah, it's just obviously a brilliant story and great for Jose Juan Romero to manage at the Segunda level for the first time ever, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, and brilliant for the fans who've been superb. I mean, I think that's probably where you first warmed them as a club, was it? Didn't you? I know our good friend Matt Harrison went down there with Malaga and was incredibly warmly greeted by the local fans. And there's a really good buzz around the club in terms of there just seemed to be a very positive bunch of supporters and a nice bunch as well. So it's difficult not to warm to them as well. And a brilliant achievement, as you say, by Jose Juan Romero to completely transform the club's fortunes. And yeah, delighted that they will get their chance in Segunda. I look forward to talking about it the next year with my other hat on the Spanish show. But yeah, sad obviously to lose them from Primera because they've been a real credit to the division. Some managers didn't have such a good week, did they? Or coaches or whatever we want to call them. Tell us a little bit more about the one that we didn't even notice had gone last week. That was very remiss of us. We don't tend to get things wrong, but occasionally we miss things. And this was one we did miss before we recorded last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, weirdly, the managerial merry-go-round has gone off a little bit early this summer, and people have really hit the emergency exit button quite quickly. I mean, the first one to go last week and that we missed out was Tony Seligrat at Lugo. He'd only been in charge since January, and he didn't start too badly, if I remember rightly. I know he had those 3 losses, and then he won 3, and then he lost 3, and then I'm pretty sure he won 2. So he's been very, very up and down in terms of his form and in terms of his consistency as a manager. But I think Lugo obviously staring relegation down the face at the moment, occupying that final relegation spot. So they feel like they've had to do something, but 3 games doesn't feel like enough for any of these sides. We look at Alex Ortiz as well, who's come in there. He's not going to be able to do anything too much with that, is he? With 2 games to go?
No, I suppose he started really well, didn't he? And this is a thing, isn't it? I mean, we've been looking at this over the last couple of weeks. Salmon on out at Atletico San Luqueño. Vicente was a bit longer ago, Alcoyana, wasn't he? But certainly the 3 changes we've seen this week were like, there's literally, 3/2 games to go. There's 3 with Alex Ortiz in his first game in charge this weekend, and then there'll be 2 more debutants next weekend. I mean, like, this is absolutely crackers. But I think you're right. The situation here with Lugo, we're going to talk about another team that probably feels the same way in a few minutes. Lugo have, of course, been in Segunda quite a lot over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think the prospect of dropping down to Segunda Ref, even for a small club like them, is just not palatable. So obviously the sporting director wasn't very happy with Roberto Sainz with this decision. He left as soon as Seligrat left. And I suppose, yeah, if you bring somebody in January and then they decide to get rid of him in April, then probably, it's probably not exactly a vote of confidence in your decision making, is it? But yeah, he did have a good start, Alex Ortiz, although, as you say, very, very little time to make a difference. But they did come back, I think, from 2-0 down, didn't they, to get a draw in his first game in charge. And that particular result meant that another coach lost his job on the back of it.
Yeah, and probably the surprising one, to be perfectly honest, and that was Danny Vidal at Nastic Tarragona, because him reaching the playoffs last season and the circumstances that they didn't quite reach promotion on, there's a lot of fallout from that. But this season, he's also managed to rebound and lift them, and he's got them in a playoff place. However, the powers that be in the corridors in Tarragona have decided that we need to make sure we get into the playoffs again because they're in danger of fallout at the moment. We're going to speak about the chasing back onto the Grupo Uno playoff shortly, but for me, this one probably hits hard in many different ways. And, I won't lie, I don't have massive feelings towards Nasic to Tarragona, but seeing the reaction of the fans, Liam, but more importantly of the players. When do you ever see not only a manager getting given the chance to say goodbye in a press conference, but all the players turn up to do it with him and give him these emotional messages to say goodbye? He broke down in tears at one point. It's a very weird situation, isn't it? And very strange of Nastic to do this, given there's only 2 games left to go.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and that's how it looks to us on the outside, and we've seen the videos and everything. And I have to say that at this point, I thought to myself, I need some sort of confirmation of this, because it does look extraordinary on the outside. It looks like a lot of fans are not keen on this move, especially because they've gone for a guy called Luis César Sampedro, who did take Nastic up to La Liga nearly 20 years ago. That is, yes, really, nearly 20 years ago. But he then didn't last very long in La Liga, and he hasn't been in the game since 2021. And ironically, his last spell as a coach was at Lugo, and he lasted 8 games, of which he won none of them, and was shown the door. So, I just wanted to find out whether my sense of what the fans were at with this was correct. So many thanks to Enrique Peire. I reached out to him on the DMs on X, and he basically said exactly that. He said, I wouldn't have been hugely surprised if he'd gone. I'm not hugely confident going forward. I thought we might well lose in the playoffs with Dani Vidal in charge. But, ultimately, the timing seems absolutely extraordinary to do it at this time. And of course, the appointment of Sampedro also seems very strange. And so, I think although there was certainly some discontent about what was going on with Dani Vidal, but he is, born and bred, in Tarragona, isn't he? He's very much a hometown man. And although they were concerned about how things were going, I think they at least expect him to get the chance to put it right in the playoffs, exactly the chance that they felt he deserved, perhaps after last year. They weren't very optimistic about him doing so, but they're astonished that he hasn't been given the chance to even try to do so. Thank you for that, Enric. And I think, as I say, reading around a lot of the comments on social media, that does seem to be the general opinion that maybe he wasn't faultless and maybe he could have lost his job if they hadn't gone up. But ultimately, to do it now seems very, very harsh.
Yeah, I kind of understand the relegation threatened teams doing what they need to do, but football is a very strange game that way. And when your team is in the playoffs, and bearing in mind the form that Nastic have shown and the quality of play that they've got as well, let's not forget this isn't a poor side for this level. This is one would say a Segunda club in waiting at whichever point that will be. They've got the facilities, they've got the squad, they've got the back in order to do it. It something doesn't feel right about it for me. And, the playoffs are very much a sudden death shootout. And, for all we know, Nastic could have gone on a bit of a run and gone up with a bit of a, with ease. We just don't know, do we? So it's very, very weird to do this. Maybe a little bit weirder, Liam, if we just take ourselves away from Catalonia a minute and move over to the capital. Fuenlabrada have also got rid of their manager, but again, in the similar situations to Lugo and to a few other clubs down that neck of the woods, they've decided to get rid of Diego Nogales and decided to bring in 3 managers. I think this is the way I read this. A trio. It's not uncommon to see maybe a managerial duo. There's obviously a very famous one that we know of in the northwest of England here with, the former Salford, I think the Radcliffe Borough now, if I remember rightly. Is it Morley and Johnson, if I've got the names correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
But three managers to save your season. This is again strange. These managerial changes are odd.
Well, I mean, there's a sporting manager at the head of it to be assisted by 2, but as you say, it's been very much sold as a trio, hasn't it? And these are guys with, Fuenlabrada in their DNA and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, hang on a minute, this is, But again, I think it's born out of fear, isn't it? It's exactly the same situation I described at Lugo a bit earlier on. Fuenlabrada have spent plenty of seasons in recent years in Segunda. they finally dropped into the relegation zone. I think that maybe the first time all season they've been in the relegation zone in Grupo Dos. And for me, the people in charge at Fuenlabrada have panicked and decided to get some people in who are going to show some fight and, love the club, blah, blah, blah. But, very, very strange for me to do that. But, as I say, they're probably looking around and seeing Atletico San Luqueño winning with a new guy in charge and a couple of wins recently for the manager at the company. He's not the manager, he's the sort of coach at the sort of man in charge at Alcoyana, Jose Luis Garrido, and then obviously at also Carlos de la Marbella. But they've had a bit longer, haven't they? I just think this is extraordinary to do this with 2 games to go. And I take your point exactly about Nastic. Yeah, it is the sort of thing that we are more likely to see when teams are desperately trying to survive. But a team that's in the playoffs that are very, very good at home as well. They've not really lost that ability to win at home. They did this week, but they've generally thrashed some teams. Only a few weeks ago, I watched them absolutely hammer Ponferradina. So it is a strange one, and then let's see how it works out. But I'm not too confident for them really. We did gain a team. We're not going to talk too much about. We've talked in previous weeks about teams that are coming up from Segunda Ref. We're not going to really say much this week, are we, Nick? Because we're actually 3 more weeks away from the Segunda Ref playoffs being complete. We might perhaps talk about it when we get down to the finals, but at the moment we're only just coming up to the second leg of the semi-finals. So we're not going to say who we think we might get, although we could mention that Numancia beat Getafe B 2-0 away from home, which we were quite pleased about. But we have gained one from above, haven't we? We've gained a team from Segunda, which we knew we were going to get for quite a while, and we now have officially got them.
Yeah, I think it was always sort of signposted, wasn't it, with the form this side have shown this season. But they did give themselves a little bit of hope in the run to a few final games as well, and that is obviously Tenerife, over in the Canary Islands. This is a big fish for this level, isn't it, Liam? In terms of people dropping down into it. They've been a Segunda club for, I want to say, 14 years, and obviously, it had been in La Liga, not too long ago at the turn of the century under, well, Rafa Benitez got them there, but then he left to go to Valencia. But, this is a big, club for this category. Obviously, the demands of this as well is also be quite interesting because this is a club which is in the far-flung corner of Spanish football. There'll be some travelling for teams that are going across to Tenerife, but I suppose the bonus for this is it has got an airport, unlike Ceuta, so it's maybe not as bad as we think. But yeah, it's not been a great season for them, but I suppose sounds like they're building a bit of a war chest to have a crack next season and come straight back up again. Do you reckon they'll find it easy, or do you think it might be a bit of a struggle to get out of El Pozo for them?
Well, they've got Abel Ferreira in charge there, and he's obviously had a good record with the club, and has certainly, as you say, overseen an improvement in performances over the last few months when he's been in charge there. I mean, the issue is, can they get the players to stay? Will they lose all the best players? Almost certainly. You're right. I think there will be money made available, and of course, as we said a number of times before, at Primera F level, there's no salary cap or anything, so you can spend what you like. I'm not saying they're going to, absolutely put the whole war chest on the table, but I think there'll be a sense that they want to get straight back up again, and they have a great chance of doing so. I think with Ferreira at the helm. But yeah, as we know, it's not called El Pozo for nothing. Even that people see it's a bit easier to get out of nowadays than it used to be, and it certainly is. It's still a tough league, isn't it? And they will, of course, I think, going to Grupo Dos. So if Murcia don't get up, for instance, there'll be some, and there'll be some fields I'm sure will want to have a go at it next year as well. No, they won't, because they're not in it, either. They've got promoted, but some other teams will want to have a go at it, shall we say? And I think they'll find it. They'll need to turn up with the right attitude and get the right kind of players in that are up for a fight, basically.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a Malaga-esque reset for them. Whether they have the opportunity to, utilize their cantera or local boys from the local area as well to come and put a bit of pride into the shirt. I think that's the thing that's been missing for them this season. To be fair, it feels like they've had a lot of mercenaries, would be the word I would use. But to any Tenerife fan that's listening, I can guarantee you this: it'll feel bad now. It'll feel a lot better next season because, like I say, this is a great league to be in. Obviously, the challenges are different. If you're a real diehard fan, you like doing home and away, for example, then you're going to go to some very unique places as well that you've probably not visited in the last almost fifth of a century. So it'd be interesting to see how they get on next season, won't it, Liam? So just to finish with then, how about a little heartwarming story, Liam? Because I think we've got a lovely one here, haven't we, about a certain man from the south of Spain who ended up near us this weekend in Alicante.
He absolutely did. Yeah, I love this story. I know you do sometimes see it, I follow a few of these football away days sites and stuff, that comment on fans around Europe who do these massive journeys pretty much on their own to go to games. Pepe, the Algeciras fan, I wish I could meet him at some point and shake his hand for his tremendous effort. 13-hour round trip to Alicante in his car with his wife and his daughter to watch his team play Hercules. Now, this isn't even a game. Algeciras has been pretty decent recently, but it's not a game on which anything rises. Two sides that are mid-table essentially. And after all that way he went, although maybe he wanted a bit of peace from them by the time he got to Alicante. His wife and daughter didn't come in with him. They stayed away, and he ended up being the only spectator in the away end, potentially probably the only person other than the coaching staff and the players who were actually, and the Directivo who bothered to travel, who were actually supporting Algeciras. And some great pictures out on social media, isn't it, of him sat all on his own in this absolutely enormous away. And so fair play to him. And we do both like Hercules, don't we, Nick? But I think it's fair to say we were both delighted that Algeciras won this one for him, weren't we?
Yeah, definitely. And I do curse the fixture schedule now, because obviously we had a brilliant time in Elda watching Eldense against Malaga as our final game of the weekend. Obviously, as a Malaga fan, it wasn't probably as fun for me. But tell you what, to have been in that away end with Pepe would have been an absolute dream for me. And I think, that could have been our choice if the fixture list was just a little bit kinder and the Jose Rico Perez was just a little bit closer to Alicante Airport as well. So, fair play to him on that one, because, we do some traveling, but that is insane.
Absolutely. Grupo Uno. Let's go through the top and the bottom. The top is exactly the same as at the start of the jornada. It's Cultural Leonesa, Ponferradina, Andorra, Real Sociedad B, and Gimnàstic de Tarragona. The big news is that the gap between Cultural Leonesa and Ponfe is back to 5 points, having been obviously 2 points going into the jornada. And now the nearest challengers to the top 5 are Zamora, who are, I think, just 3 points behind Gimnàstic in 6th place. So, tremendous effort. We might talk a bit more about them later, I think, mightn't we? Because we feel a little bit bad. We've slightly overlooked them in these last few weeks. What about the bottom 5, Nick?
So down at the bottom 5, just the one change down there with those crafty Osasuna Promesas climbing out of the relegation zone and Lugo falling in there, despite that excellent fight back in Tarragona as well. But because Unionistas decided to pull off a bit of surprise win and score their first goal under their new manager against Bilbao Athletic, they are also now pulled into it as well. So it's basically the other 4 are the same as before, and that is Amor Borrieta at bottom. Obviously, we know that they're relegated already. Gimnàstica, Barça Athletic, and Sestao River Club down there. I wish they weren't.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll talk a bit more about them later, I think, won't we? But unfortunately, that great result and a great goal by Rabadan for Unionistas, great length of the field effort, team goal, and all that has at least given us that bit of good news. A club that we like beating a filial is never going to get out badly, is it? So tell me about those Sestao River Club boys against Gimnástica Segoviana, please. The first of my partidos de la semana that I chose last week.
Well, we spoke about this one being a potential opportunity for Sestao, River Club to get out of the relegation zone. Gimnàstica Segoviana, looking like they were pretty much dead and buried, weren't they? But no one decided to give Josh Farrell the memo on this one, because he gave the visitors the lead, quite early on, and he's had a bit of a renaissance here at the in the 3rd tier since joining in the January transfer window. He scored 5 goals in 15 games and doing quite well for a Welsh international playing in the Spanish 3rd tier as well. But it was a cracking strike from Gorka Garay to bring the sides level with just 4 minutes to go, only for Hugo Diaz, which I think is a brilliant name. And if I remember rightly, he's got experience of playing in England. I can't quite remember with who, but he scored a 97th minute winner to keep those slim survival hopes alive, didn't he, Liam? And, there must have been party in the street of this historic town with this result, because it does just keep them just keeps them going for one more week, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I think, oh God, yeah, they actually played maybe 1 or 2 games for Leeds, would you be? Leeds United, ex-Leeds United, on the bench in the third tier in Spain. You must wonder what's happened to his career, but what a big moment. Should have one of the best moments of his career. And yeah, Josh Farrell, incredible. And as I say, been playing for Lionel Benz. I think he was born in Spain. I think he's born down in the Costa del Sol. But playing in Segunda Ref and, just signed up in the winter transfer window and is the top scorer. I know he's got 5, but 5 and 15, and his first crack at Primera F football is brilliant. And yeah, they were really gone. I think if they didn't win this, that late winner, without it, they'd been 5 points away from safety with 2 games to go. Would have been an awful lot to ask of them. Now it's just 3 points, so they are still in with a shout. However, one of the other teams down at the bottom is really not looking in such good shape after a great win the weekend before at Lugo. This team, which featured in my second Partido de la Jornada, did not have a good afternoon, did they?
No, they don't. I'll try and do this without a bit of smile on my face because as much as this is a game which on the face of it, I don't think we would have been too bothered who would have won this one, to be honest with you, because I'm not gonna lie. Andorra as a project also feels a bit to me because of all the circus that goes around it with Gerard Piqué, etc. But this game, they won 3-1 and they're looking good for sort of challenging towards the top. We'll go into the permutations of some of the movements up there later on in the show. But this was actually a brilliant game for them away at Barcelona. Actually took the lead. But we're behind at half time as well. So, to recover from that when Barca have shown good form recently, it shows the strength and character of this side. And the fact they've got those 2 strikers as well, Manu Nieto and Lafora de Leon. There are a few teams with a more frightening strike force than this, are the Liam, and especially Nieto at the moment. He is on fire.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, these are players that they're interesting ones, aren't they? Because I saw some of Manu Nieto in Segunda and didn't look quite. Well, he had a little spell when he did initially. I think he was at Andorra. He was on loan from somewhere, I think, and did all right, and then sort of disappeared a little bit after that, and didn't really end that season very well. And Lautaro de Leon's had a little look at Segunda as well. So I wonder if these two might be, like we sometimes get in England, good enough for the Championship, not good enough for Premiership. Well, let's see how they get on if they do get up. But yeah, at this level, they're frightening, as you say. And they had this situation in Andorra where they played it away at Barça Athletic in the first game of the weekend, essentially. So they knew that they could cut the gap to Cultural to 2 points because Cultural hadn't played at stage. They played Baracaldo later on. So psychologically, there was a big motivation there for them to close right in on the leaders. But unfortunately for them, Cultural have been rocking consistently over the last few weeks in a bad way, not a good way. Did actually get a good rock in this week, didn't they? The crowd were rocking after a 2-1 win against Baracaldo, which meant that they were then 5 points ahead again of both Andorra and Ponferradina. And then we move on to Ponferradina, which was the feature of my third game of the week, wasn't it? And what happened in the Basque Country in that one.
Well, we were talking about this in terms of how Ponfe, with a team with the momentum, and we're looking like they could maybe usurp Cultural for the first time this season as well. Actually, I had to double check this myself to think like, well, maybe they've been top but been interchanged a few times. Cultural Leonessa have been first since day one of this season and haven't budged from the top there, which I think is just remarkable to see. So it'd be a real, blow to them if they were to slip out and fall into the playoffs at the final hurdle, but more on that shortly. As far as Real Sociedad B against Ponferradina are concerned, 3-2 to the home side in the Basque Country, as you've alluded to. The opening goal from Miguel Gote, really bad luck for Prieto in the Ponfe goal. But then, Real Sociedad B take the real control of this game after about 20 minutes. And, they are not a bad side, let's not forget. They are a side that are competing very much in the playoffs. I think they've pretty much secured that playoff place now with this result. They are playing for a manager who's obviously also going to ascend to the top job with the first team at the end of the season. So they want to go out on a high, probably similar to what they were like under Xabi Alonso as well. And
except he took them down, Nick. So
I know he took them down.
That didn't work out so well. So
Well,
maybe the new man in the hot seat is going to be keen to end his. He's definitely going to end his time as Real Sociedad big coach better than Xabi Alonso did. But let's hope it doesn't work against him in the long term, because Xabi Alonso got Real Sociedad B relegated and he's about to become the Real Madrid coach. So it didn't harm him too much, did it? But
exactly.
No, I take your point. He definitely did go out and hire Xabi Alonso for Real Sociedad B. But I would suspect that this man will have a better season, even if he doesn't eventually get out of the playoffs.
Yeah, no, and to be fair, it wasn't made easy for the man, because Ponfe did come back to 2-2 in this game, but Eder Garcia did win it for the home side within the final 10 minutes as well. And like I said, I've alluded to the fact that they pretty much secured it. They only need 1 point from their last 2 games to get that, and I'm pretty sure that that would be the case. In terms of that, Liam, is the title decided now? There's a 5-point gap. There's 6 points still to play for. Cultural playing Ponfe next, and also Cultural have got Andorra last game of the season. It's a bit of a mix, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, isn't it? I mean, it's beautifully set up, isn't it, in terms for the neutral? But Ponfe against Cultural, I suspect that might be one of your partidos de semana in Grupo 1 this week. But not a huge surprise when that one appears in about 10 minutes, I imagine. But yeah, no, ultimately, yeah, I think Cultural, that was a massive weekend for them. We always knew it was going to be tough for Ponfe to go to Real Sociedad B, and it did turn out that way. I still can't call it though. I'm still not convinced by Cultural. I can still see them losing to Ponfe this weekend, and then Andorra, winning this weekend. It could get very, very interesting at Top Gun for that last week. So yeah, it ought to be doable. They just need to avoid defeat this week or two, and they should be okay. But then the fact that they're playing Andorra in the last game, it's just potentially they could be 3 points clear. Andorra going to that last game. And if Andorra won it, it's I think the head-to-head's level, isn't it? So yeah, it's still too close to call, but yeah, they're in a great position. And as I say, we will know by around about 8 o'clock English time, 9 o'clock Spanish time on Saturday evening if we have a champion. And if we don't, then it really might be incredibly tight on that last Saturday of the season. How about the relegation picture down at the bottom of Group 1?
So for the relegation picture, it's sort of looking like it's going to level itself out ever so slightly, Liam. We're looking at the teams that are down there at the moment. We've got Unionistas, Sestao, Lugo. Real Union are still very much within a shout of being pulled into the mess. I know they're just sitting just outside it as well. Also Barça Bay and Osasuna Promesas from a Filiales perspective. I think just looking at the fixtures that they've got in these last 2 games, you've kind of got to put maybe Union Real Union to survive once again, maybe in that 15th place, because they've got the 2 B teams in the last run-in. Obviously, one of them is Bilbao Athletic away, but as we've learned with these, B teams, they don't do things traditionally at all, do they? They set up in a certain way, and I don't think they'll feel the pressure the same way that they will be doing. I would probably suggest that they have got the better running than compared to anybody as well, especially Lugo, who have got Zamora at home next. And obviously, we've spoken, Zamora are chasing that final playoff place, so I think they should be quite worried.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's looking pretty bleak, isn't it, for Sestao and Barça Athletic and Gimnastica, as we said, have sort of granted themselves a stay of execution, but they're playing Gimnastic this week, and then they finish away at Zamora. So, I think although they did brilliant this weekend to beat Sestao and obviously hammered a nail into Sestao's chances of escaping the relegation trapdoor. But ultimately, yeah, I think probably Gimnastica, Sestao, Barça Athletic, and Morevieta obviously already gone. The last one is so hard to call. I'd hope it would be Osasuna Promesas, but I'm not sure at this stage. Very, very close. Group 2, Grupo 2, whichever you want to call it. Tell us about the top 5 in that.
Grupo 2. Well, this might surprise you, Liam, but it's actually the same 5 as before, as per last week, as per Grupo 1 as well. We are getting that all sorted. And obviously, we've got Ceuta up as champions now, so that is all done and dusted, decided. So the playoff jostling is really where this starts to begin, as you start to look towards the other side of the draw. So again, we'll repeat this so everyone's aware. You do not play the same teams in your league in the playoff. You transition across groups. So if you finish second in Grupo Uno, you'll play fifth in Grupo Dos, and vice versa, and everything in between as well. So we've got Real Murcia currently in there. We've got Ibiza, Antequera, and Merida. I think that's a good set of playoffs teams there, if I'm being perfectly honest, Liam. And I'll be interested to see whether they can hold on to those positions come the end of the season. One change in the bottom five, as we know, Intercity are already down. It's not looking great for Recreativa de Huelva, both on the pitch and off it at the moment, unfortunately. Alcayano and Atlético San Yuqueño all still below that dotted line in Grupo Dos. But they have been joined by Fuenlabrada, who, as we've just mentioned, have brought in that trio of managers to try and save them. They are in the expense of Yeclano Deportivo with that fantastic win this weekend, who have pulled themselves out. It must have been our presence that really lofted them out of that relegation places. But which one of those partidas de la jornada should we start with there then, Liam?
Which one would you like me to start with, Nick? Which one should we focus on out of the three games you chose? What do you reckon?
Well, I'm feeling the one that might be freshest in my mind, if I'm being perfectly honest, and it probably has something to do with us being there. Let's talk about our time in Yeclano. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good to me. So this game, to be fair, I mean, they went behind early on, didn't they, Yeclano Deportivo? A really dubious penalty. That's the second time it's happened to them. They had another one given against them against Algeciras. And you can see the players were absolutely fuming. And I really worried at that stage. It was chucking it down, wasn't it? And it just felt like after all the build-up in the week, about we must win this game. It's crucial. It looked like a really tough situation from which to get the victory that they needed. But they battled back. They got a couple of penalties before half-time, both of which were absolute stonewall penalties. I'm sure you'll agree, Nick. And they also ended up playing against 9 men because two Villarreal B players got sent off. Strange. We might hopefully be able to get together some sort of video of our day later on in the week, might we, Nick? Although that's going to depend on your technical expertise rather than mine. The Villarreal B coach didn't quite share our opinion. We got the pleasure of listening to in the press conference. He didn't hang around for very long, did he, Nick? He was in there very much because he had to be there, not because he wanted to be there. And he wasn't very happy with the referee. We were absolutely delighted with the referee. We thought he had an absolutely great game after that bad early mistake, giving a disgraceful penalty against Yeclano. And it was very interesting from there on, wasn't it, really? Because we kind of, I don't know what you thought, but start the second half, I felt they didn't really know what to do because they were winning comfortably in some senses because they were playing as 9 men. But what do you do then? I don't know if that's how you read it.
Yeah, it kind of felt like they were feeling them out for a long period of time. And that probably comes down to the fact that Villarreal B were shutting up shop. They did drop back into a very defensive shape and basically banked to look on the play on the counter-attack. But I thought once they managed to get that tempo moving and once they managed to get the players in the right spots, Yeclano, it really started to open up for them. And that's when you saw them taking these, wonderful shots from distance, this brilliant interplay, great wing play from Pau Perez as well. And, you've probably seen our teams of the week now, but I also had Gabri in there, who I just thought, what was the comparison I said to you? It was, if you remember Chris Wilder's Sheffield United when they first came up to the Premier League and he had that roaming centre-back, the Chris Basham role, which won't be the last time that Chris Basham gets mentioned on this podcast. Gabri just let out his inner Chris Basham, and he was just a roaming centre-back. And half the time you caught him on the edge of the 18-yard box, taking pops at the goalkeeper. And with that confidence, I do hope that, they've got a tough game coming up next week. But I really would like to see them take that next step and just go, you know what, bang every game now and pick up this form and go for it. Because, ultimately, we're going to be a little bit biased now, but the fans deserve it and the team deserves it as well. And the town of Yecla deserves it.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And I think although it ended up being a fairly comfortable victory, we need to sort of single out Ivan Martinez here as well. He made an amazing save high to his right, one a long distance effort from a Villarreal B player. Again, if that had gone another sliding doors moment, it's 2-2. You've been pulled back to 2-2 against the side that's playing 9 men. How does that affect your confidence? But he made his great save. Antonio Sanchez hammered in a third. A few nutters who were standing behind the goal getting wet decided to jump around. That was captured by cameras and stuff, so that's quite amusing as well. Those mad British people. But yeah, ultimately brilliant. And by the time we'd finished getting wet in the open terrace, the Fondo Sword, it actually did stop raining more or less as the game ended, didn't it? Which is kind of weird, kind of typical. But never mind. A great 90 minutes for the home side, and a massive win, a game they had to win. And yeah, we see where they go from there. The next one, I'll choose. Yeah.
I'll just add on to that, Liam, as well, just to give the listener, and they'll probably see this in the video or anything we put on. This wasn't just rain. This was biblical rain. I am so surprised that this game didn't get called off at any point, because I've never seen rain like this in Spain, for one. But B, you could see how much the ground was swelling with water as well. So I don't know if that helped Yeclano, but certainly sitting in that Fondo Sur, or standing in that Fondo Sur, we were a bit like, how are they playing in this? This is incredible. The thunderstorms as well. It was all there. It all happened this weekend, didn't it?
It certainly did, and remarkably, we were fortunate enough to be able to do an interview with Teddy after the game. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to him, and again, we'll have that out on social media later in the week. We actually got to walk on the pitch, and the pitch was absolutely fine. I was like, how is this even possible? I've never seen so much rain fall in such a short space of time in Spain, and the pitch was fine. I had visions of puddles everywhere, which you see in Spain sometimes. The game just carries on. It's quite bizarre. They don't have any idea about health and safety or anything like that. They just carry on playing in the puddles. It becomes like a water polo game, basically. But yeah, pitch held up brilliantly. Top work from the groundsman, top work from the team. On they go to Ceuta this weekend. Right, much as we love them, we're going to have to move on, Nick, and talk about Alcoyana's Intercity. And what a story there with Luis Miguel Garrido. Eh? That's incredible, isn't it? A 3-0 win away at, I think it was Atlético Sanluqueño, wasn't it? 2 weekends ago. And now he comes from behind a remontada on his own patch to win a game against Intercity.
It was, and for our other Murcian game, I wonder if the rain was as bad in Alcoy as it was in Yecla. I have not checked that actually, but yeah, he is definitely like, who needs badges? Who needs badges? Because Garrido is just absolutely showing how to do it, and this could be a great escape, really, because only a few weeks ago we were really slating Alcoyano as basically dead and buried, but now they look like the team that are in form, and look like they could pull a team like Villarreal B into trouble quite easily. But it's absolutely brilliant for them. Some great goals in this game. Really obviously good for the fans in front of their home fans as well. And I feel like they could definitely do it. And they've got good fixtures to go on with as well. They've not got too many tougher games, I don't think, the last two. So it's very much in their favour, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've got a great chance now, and fair play to them. As you say, we'd written them off a couple of weeks ago. How wrong we were with that. They're certainly going to fight to the bitter end now, aren't they? It's in Valencia, though, I think, not Murcia, I'm afraid. That geography again.
It must be close. I drove past it when I was
it's
going
on the border, the best.
To be fair, I was going to Valencia, so you're probably right.
Let's be clear. It's not in Galicia. That's the main thing. We know that. We're clear on that, at least. Yeah.
We're not falling down that trap hole again. But yeah.
No, besides the point, we did actually, when we first planned this weekend, we saw the round Murcia Antequera was the same weekend, and so when we saw that those two games were clashing, Murcia Antequera and Yeclano Deportivo Villarreal, they were a bit gutted, to be honest, weren't we? Because obviously Murcia against Antequera, the top of the table clash. But to be honest, I think we dodged a bullet there, didn't we? Having seen the highlights of the game.
Yeah, give me a 3-3 draw at Plus Ultra any time over this game, because, like you say, I felt it would have been a waste of a ticket, if I'm being perfectly honest, because just nothing happened. It's kind of like they were both, from a Real Murcia perspective, I thought they'd go hell to leather for this, and it probably gives me more concern about Real Murcia going into the playoffs now, rather than Antequera, because they just didn't feel up for it at all. And, they hardly tested the goalkeeper, both of them, and they both just ended up, looking for very dubious penalty appeals and trying to sway the referee. And it really wasn't a classic. And, dare I say, a great advertisement for this level of football, unlike what we saw at the same time. So, less said about this game, the better. And I hope they managed to, take a bit of inspiration from Ceuta and get their act together, because otherwise we could be seeing a a multiple Grupo Uno promotion if this is the case. So Ceuta up, Liam. We're confident that they've got the four behind them are going to be the same teams. I know there's a couple of filiales that are queuing at the edge of the playoffs in Grupo Dos.
Well, the Spanish word is ojalá, and ojalá basically means let's hope so. So yeah, that's my last word on the subject. As you are quite rightly said, the two teams just outside the playoffs are Sevilla Atletico and Atletico Madrid B. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to see things stay exactly as they are. Playoff wise, that's how I'd have it. Relegation wise, I wouldn't be too distressed with how things stand at the moment, but we could do with a couple of sides, couldn't we? Dropping down into that bottom five that are not currently in it at the moment.
Well, we certainly did so. And I think, to be fair, if we was to put our hat on one, which we, personally for me, I'd definitely like to see, especially after this weekend, is Villarreal B. And I think they'll find it quite a struggle because obviously they've lost their star striker to the first team, who incidentally wasn't involved this weekend and went on to score for Villarreal as they are obviously chased down that Champions League spot. But they're also going to be without two first-team starters for this game on the weekend as well against Sevilla Atletico. So, they're going to find it really, really tough coming into these final few games. They've also got a big game against Betis Deportivo, which might turn out to be a bit of a dead rubber. But you look at the form of Alcoyano, for example, and Atletico San Yeclano, you think, well, actually, can they drag Villarreal B in? It's not impossible. There's only 3 points between them now, isn't there?
No, very much so. I think we certainly could see them falling into it. It depends, as always, what sort of team they put out. And you're right. I think a young may stay with the first team because he's proved his worth this weekend, hasn't he? And that would work against him. The first of those two games they've got is against the Atletico, who are chasing the playoffs. So Betis Deportivo away might be a bit of a damp squib, as you say, from the home times perspective. They might be able to eke out a result there. But this weekend, if they don't get anything against the Atletico, they could end the weekend in the bottom five and going into the last game, facing the prospect of a double relegation, the same as Amorebieta, because they went down, of course, from Segunda last year. And there are a few good goals this week. Good, I would say, nothing great. My favourite was Gorka Garay for Sistan Rival Club, I have to say. Smashed it in the bottom corner from about 25 yards out. Sadly, counted for nothing in the end, did it? But it was a beautiful goal from him. And overall, I don't know about Mikel Gotti. What do you think about Mikel Gotti's goal? It wasn't given to him, of course. It was given to Prieto as an own goal. But I agree it has to be an own goal, and I suppose it goes down as bad luck for the keeper. But still, the technique from Gotti to hit the bar from 50 yards out, the fact it rebounded off the bar and then off the back of Prieto's head and went to the goal, I still think some credit should be due for that. But I suppose because it was an own goal, it can't really go to him.
Well, it brings up the wider discussion to say whether goalkeepers should be able to score own goals because, that they are the ultimate defenders of them, and whether, let's call it a ricochet, even though it's definitely slapped him in the back of the head and gone in. I feel for Prieto as well because he's such a good goalkeeper. And obviously, one of my first memories when we started this podcast was when he was wearing that swimming cap. And, he became a man of mystery for me. So it was sad to see him concede a goal like this because he is a lot better than that looks. But yeah, certainly the goal from Gotti, the technique is used to try it from there as well, deserves credit. And, if I was in charge, I would have given it to him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like, it is. I mean, I think Prieto's backpedaling, but he pings this, doesn't he? It's not a sand wedge, is it, Nick? It's a one iron. he hits it low and hard. And I think keeper's aware of his goal and you lob him from the halfway line. That's one thing, but this is he absolutely slaps this, and I think just to have Prieto own goal next to that, I think is doing Gotti a bit of disservice. And he plays for Filial, so you can see every now and again I am prepared to give a little bit of credit to players for the Filiales. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about the games this weekend. Some pretty good ones going on. I think I know what's coming first in your Grupo Uno, Partidos de la Jornada, Nick.
Yes, it's my turn to choose Grupo Uno, and I think we've maybe signposted this one already, but it's got to be this Castilla y León derby between Cultural and Ponfe. It could be a win or even a draw that takes Cultural up because, if they can get that distance on Ponfe and then thus on Andorra as well, that would see them promoted this weekend. As I've said before, they've been top since day one. So if they don't make it, this is going to be a bit of a heartbreaking moment for Cultural fans more than anything. So if they beat Ponfe at El Doralin, then they'll be promoted after 7 years away. It will only be their second time in Segunda since 1975, I believe, which is just mad to think for a town the size of Leon that they've not really had that representation at that level. But a Ponfe win will make things very, very interesting because obviously they'll get back within those 2 points, and Cultural play Andorra for the last game of the season. And yeah, it could make this a 3-way battle if Andorra pick up a result this weekend. And this is where the head-to-head comes in. So depending on the result this weekend, Ponfe basically have to beat Cultural 2-0 to equalise that head-to-head. Cultural also got a 1-1 draw with Andorra. So actually the winner takes all aspect of the final game of the season for Andorra is quite interesting there too. However, I believe Ponfe have got the head-to-head on Andorra after their victory in January time, I think it was, because the first game was a draw in September. So you've got this 3-way. We could end up with a mini league, Liam. We could end up with a mini league at the top of the Grupo Uno for the title, which just is mental, isn't it?
Absolutely crazy. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I'm not sure all 3 can finish the same amount of points, but certainly there's a very good chance that 2 could. So yeah, incredible stuff. And yeah, incredible stuff for us as neutrals, but I'm sure Cultu fans just want to get it done this weekend. I think if they get a point where Ponfe, that obviously knocks Ponfe out of the equation, doesn't it? And then I suppose Andorra can only get to within 3 points, can't they? So yeah, but Ponfe at home, Derby. Not sure that's going to happen. A slightly less appetizing prospect for the neutral. You've chosen your second game, but it's a massive game, isn't it, down the bottom of this Grupo Uno?
It's a huge game, yeah. And as I mentioned before, Real Union, have the advantage with them at the moment, and they're playing Osasuna Promesas. It's not going to be a classic choice. And basically, I think from this one, the winner will guarantee themselves survival, basically. So again, I don't like, pinning my colours to the mast, so to speak, on this podcast, but I hope for the sake of this that Real Union get the win, because it'll put a lot of pressure on Osasuna Promesas to fall into that relegation zone potentially. But as I've mentioned before, Filiales don't work the same way as other clubs that feel the pressures of, or the burdens of going down there as well, and they'll just take that final game as it's just another game. If we go up, we go up. We go down, we go down. I don't think it really matters to them, unfortunately. So yeah, hopefully a Real Union win there for us to watch that game. And then we'd also mentioned on Twitter that we're going to give a lot of love to Zamora. And I think we've done that so far. But let's take it up a notch, because we're going to make the final Partido de la Jornada Zamora against Lugo. Is going to be quite a big game this weekend, isn't it, Liam? Zamora, as we said, chasing that final playoff place. Nastic, I'm interested to see what happens with the new manager there, whether the players actually feel like fighting for the new gaffer, because that outpour from the players for Danny Vidal that we saw on the cameras, that feels emotional to me, and that feels like some heads could go, but that lends itself to Zamora to get a result here. And, it'd be excellent to see them in the playoffs as well, given this is their first season at this level, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. We did allude to it earlier on, didn't we, that maybe we'd sort of bigged up Orense on a number of occasions because they've been great, and Baracaldo as well, both, as you say, recién ascendido, as we say in Spain. I don't say it in Spain right now because I'm in England, but yeah, it is referred to as los recién ascendidos, is the teams that have come up most recently. And Zamora, brilliant effort from them, just sort of slightly snuck under the radar, under our radar, but doing a brilliant job and a very favourable last couple of games. And I'm absolutely with you here, Nick. I think there is real potential there for this to go wrong for Gimnastic, given how, as you say, how clearly attached the players are to Danny Vidal as a coach. Zamora will benefit from that if so. So whatever happens, it's been a brilliant season for them, and we can only apologise that we've perhaps slightly left them under the radar on our show. And they're certainly proving that we should have paid more attention to them over the last few weeks. It's just the way they go about things. It's no fuss, no bother, and tremendous achievement from a club that isn't a massive club, and so it's brilliant to see them right in the thick of it, and of course in absolutely no danger of going down, which is obviously any team that comes up for Segunda Ref, their first priority is to stay in the division. And it's interesting that in this group you've got Zamora and Tarazona and Orense, who have all survived pretty comfortably, which is great for for me, for the league, because you want teams to come up and be able to cope with the added expectations of Primera F, don't you?
Yeah, and Baracaldo into that mix as well. Let's not forget, I think obviously the wheels have come off for them a little bit too late, but they were looking at potentially double promotions given their form in the earlier part of the season. So I think that's a great advertisement. And, looking at some of the teams that are coming up already from Segunda Ref, I think they'll also add to that sort of like steel of this league and perform quite, gallantly next season. So it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, we definitely need to focus and keep an eye on Zamora a little bit more because they are dark horses for me at the minute. Again, we spoke about Real Murcia. If they do finish second and, playing pretty underwhelmingly at the moment, do they want to come up against a team like Zamora who have got it all to give, and they'll just fight for the shirt and they'll just do what they need to do because they are, living the dream essentially at the moment compared to where they were this time last season. So, yes, I'll turn over to Grupo Dos now, Liam, as we head towards the end of the show. So, who are you going to go for this weekend?
Yeah, I'm aware that we've talked a lot already, haven't we? So we are slightly running out of time. We always try and stick to not much more than an hour. So let's go through these relatively quickly. Atletico San Luqueño against Real Murcia. Obviously, returning hero Jose Perez Ferreira got off to the perfect start when he led Atletico San Luqueño to a win, which I thought was a bit of a surprise that Betis Deportivo still had an outside chance of getting it into playoff places, and that basically killed that one stone dead. And so the issue now, I suppose, when you said Murcia were deeply unimpressive last weekend against Antequera, how much are they going to be affected by seeing their automatic promotion hopes disappear last weekend? How desperate are they to hang on to that second place? Could be an interesting one this. I wouldn't back against a home win here because, I think Atletico San Luqueño are in a good place right now, and I'm not so sure about Real Murcia. I hate, as you know, to mention Filiales in the Partidos de la Semana, but Atletico B against Ibiza is a massive game for me. Last chance to lean for Atleti B. Have to win, I think. Have to expect the Merida will probably go and beat Recre in Huelva. They might be hoping that Antequera slip up against Betis Deportivo, but I think they need to win this one regardless. The question is how up for Ibiza going to be, sorry. I think they might be quite up for it because, as we said already, Real Murcia are not absolutely killing it at the moment, and they're only a point behind them, and they'd love to finish second, although I suppose what you just said would mean that they might end up playing Zamora, so perhaps they wouldn't. But yeah, I think Ibiza will be up for this one. And then finally, no bias intended here at all, Ceuta, Yeclano Deportivo. I know it's not, top against second or anything like that, or two teams pushing for the players, but this is intriguing. I just want to know how much partying Ceuta will have been doing this week. Hopefully lots from the Yeclano Deportivo point of view. How keen will they be to hang on to that 24 game? It'll be 24th game when if they don't lose this week. Well, do they want to go for the quarter century next week, to leave the league on a high? And then how will Yeclano turn up for this game? As you say, they were really positive from 1-0 down last weekend. Will they go and look for a point? Will they shut up shop and have a low block? He didn't seem to be suggesting that after the game, Adrian, and he seems suggesting they go and have a crack at it. And they will know that Ceuta will have been a bit distracted this week. So, ultimately, let's see what happens. It's still probably odds on a home win, but, you never know, do you? So let's see how that pans out. And of course, we haven't mentioned yet, have we, Nick, that all these games, as they're the penultimate week of the season, they all kick off at 6 p.m. British time, 7 p.m. Spanish time on Saturday evening. So sadly, as the wonderful FEF TV doesn't offer multi-screen, we're going to have to take our pick, aren't we, as to what we watch.
We will, and I believe you'll be taking your pick directly, if I know that right, Liam, as well, because I believe you're going to be maybe heading to one of these games. Do you want to tell people, or are you going to keep it a secret?
No, I'm happy to say I'm actually fortunate enough to be in Madrid this weekend, and so I'm going to be going to the Battle of the Gymnasticas. Not exactly. Gymnastica. This week we haven't got it wrong, have we? We've managed a mistake each week for the last 2 weeks with Gymnastica and Gymnastic. Why did it have to be called such a similar name? But yeah, I'm going to watch Gymnastica against Gymnastic, which looks intriguing. Obviously, as we said, Gymnastica with a big win last week, and Gymnastic. Well, what kind of gymnastics going to turn up under the new coach, San Pedro? We shall see, but it should be intriguing, and I'm really looking forward to it. Haven't been to Segovia before either, so it should be great.
Yeah, looks a brilliant place to go visit too, and I'm incredibly jealous of the scenario you find yourself in. A working holiday as well, may I add, for anyone who's curious. And I suppose you've got your Primera game that you're going to. And you'll have your Spanish Segunda.
Primera Ref game. I'm not going to say Primera. I wouldn't go anywhere near Primera, Nick.
Primera ref game. Sorry, yes.
Primera is not for me. I barely know what's going on. With my other hat on, I was complaining about there being a gap in the Segunda schedules, at which point Alex told me on the Spanish Segunda show that it was because Primera were having their penultimate week of the season. I was like, I didn't even know that. We're far too focused on Primera ref and the Segunda as well to worry about the big boys up top, aren't we? But yeah, it will be Primera ref for me, and then maybe another game, but we'll see.
Yes, definitely. And from an El Partido perspective, just to give a quick plug before we end, advertising just seems to happen sometimes. And in the week that Carlo Ancelotti has been announced as the new manager of Brazil, we're going to be doing our favourite Brazilian 11. So, yeah, that should be quite an interesting one, because we're also going to try and match them up with our favourite Argentine 11s and see who would win in that game. I'm delighted to say that our friend and friend of the podcast, Matt Harrison, is going to join us once again to fill out that 11 as well. So that should be quite interesting. There is also a new El Partido en Directo from the Plus Ultra game that has been put out there this evening as well. So do go check that out. And maybe if we're really good, and maybe if I stop saying Primera and start calling it Primera Ref, Liam might even do us a El Partido en Directo this weekend on his travels too. But we'll keep our fingers crossed for that one.
But yeah, for now, I might be going to a Tercera Ref playoff game, Nick. So if I do, then you definitely get a Partido en Directo from that. I promise you right now.
Don't you flirt with me, Liam. Don't you flirt with me. So yes, we'll wrap up there. Like I say, we are now barreling down to the final two games of the season. It is all still to play for in Grupo Uno at least, and those playoffs and relegation spots are getting interested across the border as well. But for now, I'll say thank you to you at home. I'll say thank you to you, Liam, as well. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Hasta la próxima.